Hey, how's it going, guys? The lock that I have here is another ASSA 700. This is a 7-pin pin tumbler lock that contains tapered pins, Christmas tree pins, as well as gin spools. This one in particular actually contains 3 Christmas tree pins and 1 gin spool. The Christmas tree pins, as well as the gin spool, also has matching countermilling in the pin chambers that they're in. The challenge with picking this lock is that it has to be completed in 3 distinct stages. The first stage is to pick the tapered pins to shear. The second is to pick the Christmas trees and gin spools into the countermilling, at which point you'll get a very deep false set. And then the third stage is then picking the Christmas trees and the gin spools out of the countermilling. During the first stage, the tapered pins, due to their geometry, tend to fall back down once you make progress with one of the other tapered pins. So this is very much a juggling act between the 3 tapered pins. Pushing one up a little bit will drop one of the other 2 or both of the other 2 down a little bit. So you make little progress on each of them with each pass through the lock. Once you're ultimately able to overcome the almost mind-numbing task of setting the tapered pins, then you have to worry about the Christmas tree pins and the gin spools. First, each of them has to be set into the countermilling in the plug, which in its own right isn't all that difficult. But then the next task is then to pick the lips of the Christmas tree pins and the gin spools out of the countermilling without undoing the progress that you made with the rest of the lock up to that point. The only real reliable way to be able to pick the Christmas tree pin and gin spools out of the countermilling is by using a technique called float picking. Float picking is where you manually counter-rotate the core and able to get enough space to pass the Christmas tree pin or gin spool. Needless to say, if by float picking I accidentally counter-rotate a little bit too far, even by just a hair, that will cause pins to drop, and I'll have to start the pick again from the very beginning. You'll notice that while I'm float picking, I'm using my pick to bounce up against the key pin in order to dislodge the driver from the countermilling. If done correctly, then that'll allow the driver to be able to move just a little bit more freely, at which point I can then nudge it up a little bit more in order to push the driver past the shear line. If I'm unsuccessful though, and I accidentally press the key pin and driver a little bit too far, then that will cause an overset, dropping all of my progress and forcing me to start from the very beginning. The added difficulty with picking Christmas tree pins is that each driver actually contains 2 different elements. The first one, which is a central lip in the middle of the driver, causes it to catch on in the countermilling and make it act similar to a regular spool pin. And the second one is the bottom portion or bottom lip, which catches on the countermilling and makes it act similar to any other gin driver. So in reality, picking the Christmas trees and the gin spools is in its own right a 2-stage process. The first stage is to pick each of the Christmas trees past the first element, which is the spool element. You will get a little bit of counter rotation on the core just by pressing up on the driver pin. And the second stage then is to pick each of the Christmas trees and the gin drivers out of the countermilling by float picking. As an added bonus, once the bottommost elements of each of the tree pins and the gin spools are caught in the countermilling, pressing up on them with your pick gives no counter rotation. So you're constantly having to check the pin state of each of the drivers by pressing up and bouncing your pick on the key pins and the drivers to see if you can see or feel any vertical movements on the core that may indicate whether a pin is still caught in the countermilling or if it's truly set and solid. Taken all together then, this results in a lock that can be extremely unforgiving without the right amount of patience and manual dexterity to pick it open. That being said, I can say that I am extremely happy and relieved to have been able to pick this one open. So with that, I'll go ahead and leave you to watch the rest of the video. Hope you enjoy. There it is. Third time's the charm today. Okay, this thing is already grubbed, so I'm just going to go ahead and lock this back up. Show you that the key does actually work. It does stick a little bit, but it does work. We'll start from the front then. So numbers 1, 2, 4, and 6 are going to be either tree pins or gems. So number 1 was a tree pin. See if I can make sure that you can see the orientation for that one. I guess not. Number 3 is just going to be a tapered pin. Four is going to be another security, another tree pin. Five is a tapered pin. Six is another tree pin. And seven's going to be a tapered pin. All right, so let's go ahead and take the plug out now. And then go and show you the counter milling and pin in columns number 1, 2, 4, 6, nothing in 3, 5, or 7. I'll show you the other side. Number 1, 2, nothing in 3, 4, nothing in 5, 6, number 7. The inside. Looks nice and clean. Alrighty. That'll do it for today. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.